Today's lesson is on subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators, and our objective today is that you, the students, will be able to subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators, and we're going to be using the same skills we've been using, which are finding least common multiple, making equivalent fractions, subtracting, and then simplifying. There's an additional skill that we need to take care of, and that is regrouping whole numbers into fraction pieces when necessary. It happens every once in a while, so it isn't something that we practice all the time, but we need to be able to recognize when we need to do it, and then how to do it needs to happen immediately. In order to succeed in this lesson, you're going to have to know the following. Number one, you'll have to know how to simplify fractions. You'll have to know how to find least common multiples. You'll have to know how to do equivalent fractions. And then this came from the same lesson, but that's regrouping whole numbers into fraction pieces and then subtracting mixed numbers. Our vocabulary today are numerator, denominator, mixed number, and improper fractions. If you're at all unclear with any of that skills or vocabulary, please review them before you continue with this lesson. Here's our notes for lesson 8-8, and the big idea questions are: how do I subtract mixed numbers? And then the other one is, when should I regroup fractions? Right? We need to know that. Again, it doesn't happen that often. It comes up periodically, and we need to know how to handle it immediately. All right, there are times in this lesson where you may have to regroup whole numbers into fractions. And so let's just take a look at a whole number. All right, there's a whole number of 4. When we regroup into fractions, or when we regroup anything, we take that whole number and make the whole number less, and then write the other part into fractions. But look, there's no fraction part here to know what to write as our fraction. So you need to pick anything. It just has to equal 1, right? So what kind of fractions equal 1? Well, 2 over 2 equals 1, and 3 over 3 equals 1, and anything that has the same numerator and denominator equals 1. So let's just say 3 8/8. So we look at that as 4 equals 3 and 1, and we should have been able to add 3 and 1 and to make 4 since like first grade or something like that. All right. Now, when you pick, your fraction pieces, which ones should you pick, and which denominators should you pick, or which numbers are you going to make the whole? Well, it depends on what's being subtracted. So let's say, in a very typical problem, 4 minus 1 and 1/8. Well, when you regroup this, you would regroup it into eighths, right? So that becomes 3 8/8 minus 1 1/8, and from that point, the problem is extremely simple. But a lot of people just freak out and say, well, I don't have any fraction pieces here. Well, you do. You just have to take them from the 1 and make them into fraction pieces like that. Here's an example, problem example A, and that is subtracting mixed numbers. Seems like a pretty simple problem until we get into it, and then you realize, wow, this is taking a lot of steps. So we have 19 1/3, and we're going to subtract 9 11/12. Looking at the denominators, don't have common denominators, so I need to find what is the least common multiple between 3 and 12 in order to find a new denominator. So let's see, we list multiples here. That's 3, 6, 9, and 12. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to, or need to go beyond that, because the first multiple of 12 is 12. So there you have it. I'm going to convert this fraction into 19 and some fraction with a denominator of 12. This one already has a denominator of 12, so I'm just going to rewrite that just to keep everything together. All right, 19 and 11/12. So how many 12ths do I have here? The denominator was going to tell us, right? So it's 3 times 4, and then to maintain equivalent fractions, you have to multiply the numerator by the same thing, and it's 19 4/12. Here we go again. not ready to subtract yet. Well, I have 4 twelfths trying to subtract 11 twelfths. I don't have enough twelfths. So this 19 must be regrouped. And it gets regrouped into 18 and 12 twelfths, right? So we regroup the 18 into 12 twelfths, or 19 into 18 and 12 twelfths. That's equals 19. And then we combine that with the 4 twelfths that we already had. So altogether, how many twelfths do we have now? Well, we have 18, that's our whole number, and 16 twelfths. Whew. All right, and then this one just stays the same the whole time. Just rewriting it a few times so that it stays right underneath our other things. And so it took a long time of rewriting and doing a bunch of things to get it into the point now where we can just easily subtract. And it's 16 minus 11 equals 5. And then we're dealing with twelfths there. And then 18 minus 9 is 9. So the answer, 9 and 5 twelfths. Took a long time to get there, multiple steps. But really, the math is not that difficult. Here's an example where we're going to have to do something with this mixed number because we're subtracting, or this whole number because we're subtracting a mixed number and it has a fraction, right? And there's no fraction attached to this. So we're going to rewrite the problem vertically, 9, and I'm going to subtract 1 and 3/8. And you look up here and you say, I don't have any eighths, so I need to change that fraction, or change that whole number, regroup it into a mixed number that equals 9. So what equals 9? 8 and 1 equal 9. So it's 8, and I need to make a 1 fraction here, a fraction that equals 1. And since I'm subtracting eighths, I'm just going to use eighths. So 9 equals 8 and 8/8. And then I'm going to subtract 1 and 3/8. Pretty simple at this point, right? 8 minus 3 equals 5. And then 8 minus 1 equals 7. And you should be able to recognize that 5/8 is in its simplest form by now. All right, moving on to some guided practice problems. 7 1/8 minus 4 and 1/4. And again, we're going to be using a vertical method here. And then we have 2 different denominators, and so we're going to find the least common multiple of 8 and 4. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be 8. And proved it. Good. So this one already has eighths, so it's 7 and 1/8. This one needs to convert to eighths, so I'm finding equivalent fractions now. 4 and 1/4 equals 4 and something over 8. And this is looking at the denominators. 4 times 2 equals 8. So I need to multiply the numerator by 2. Oh boy, now we have 1/8 minus 2/8. Don't have enough eighths, so I'm going to regroup this 7 and 1/8 into 6 and 9/8. And again, there's multiple ways of looking at this. One of the ways is taking the whole number and making it 1 less, and then adding the numerator and the denominator together to get 9, and so it becomes 6 and 9/8. 4 and 2/8 stays, and now I've done all my pre-work, and I'm just ready to subtract. So 9 minus 2 equals 7. We were dealing with eighths, and then 6 minus 4 equals 2. So 7 and 1/8 minus 4 and 1/4 equals 2 and 7/8. And I should be able to tell by now that it's in its simplest form because the numerator is 1 less than the denominator. All right, here's another example of when we have a whole number and need to regroup that into a mixed number. And so let's rewrite the problem again. So it's 11 minus 5 and 3/4. All right, I don't have enough fourths here. I don't have any fourths. So I need to rewrite this whole number as not 11 anymore, but 10 and 1. And the 1 is in the form of a fraction. So what do we pick for the numerator and the denominator? A 4, because we're going to be subtracting fourths. So let's use fourths. 10 and 4 fourths, or 10 and 1 equals 11. And then on the other fraction, just rewrite it so it all stays together. And all our pre-work is finished, and now it's pretty simple. 4 minus 3 is 1, and we're dealing with fourths, so it's 1/4, and then 10 minus 5 is 5. How do I know this is in its simplest form? Because the numerator is 1. That means the greatest common factor has to be 1. All right, here's some common mistakes, operation errors, and that is, when you have something like 5 and 1/8, and you're subtracting 2 and 1/2, instead of subtracting, people add for some reason. So just make sure that you watch that and that you are actually subtracting and not adding. And then regrouping errors. People make regrouping errors all the time. So let's say we have 5 and 1/5, right? And we're going to be subtracting 3 and, we'll just give it the same denominator, 2/5. Then they try to regroup this, but they regroup it wrong, and they regroup it into 5 and 6/5, right? And what went wrong here? They didn't reduce the whole number by 1. So that 5 and 1/5 should not be 5 and 6/5. It should be 4 and 6/5. Right, and this is a skill that needs to be practiced. Our to-dos today, we're going to be working out of the homework book on H8-8, and we're going to be doing 1 through 12 problems, and we're going to be doing all those problems. Here's a reminder, don't take some shortcuts. This lesson requires you to do a lot of steps and to do them correctly. All right, have a good time.